Welcome to the clinical cookout. You know you need it, it's kinda scary, but mental health is necessary. Four educated queens taking the lead, hold their hands and they'll help you succeed. Lay your head back, relax, just like that. Now listen to, learn, and your problems will burn away. Cookout, you know, we got just what you need. At the cookout, your heart and mind we will be. At the cookout.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. We are qualified clinicians who will cover various topics on mental health and will sometimes provide community resources. We are not being paid by any organization for our content, and any information we provide is general and pertains to our own personal experiences. We do not provide psychotherapy, diagnoses, or treatment recommendations on air. Any concerns related to your individual mental health should be directed to your medical and mental health professionals. We are not responsible for others' decisions or the subsequent consequences.
Welcome to the Clinical Cookout. Let's get into our hot sauce. So today we're not doing TikTok quiche, but we're going to do Facebook Shug, Book Face Shug, whatever y'all want to call it. I was minding my business and scrolling through Facebook, and I seen this story about a girl who had multiple children, multiple babies' fathers, and she was a single mother. And she wanted to have another baby. She went and got a sperm donor so that she can get pregnant because she did not want to share her baby with anybody else this time. So her stepfather said, well, we tired of you having kids. You know what I mean? Like, this time, are you going to get your tubes tied? What are you going to do so that this does not keep on happening? And she got very offended, and she was like, they gave me unsolicited advice. I didn't want that. And a lot of people agreed with her, but some people were like, well, no, sis. Actually, do they help you? Yes, they do. Then they have all the right in the world to give out that advice. So I just wanted to see how you guys were thinking about that, because I know a lot of times we get mad when our elders have to say something about the way that we're living our lives, but do they come from a place of love? Where is it coming from? What do y'all think about it? I have my thoughts.
I want to hear yours first.
Okay. So for me, it's super situational. I'm very truthful. I try to not impart my advice where it might not be wanted. Sometimes I do, but I try not to impart my advice where it might not be wanted. But if I'm going to watch a person make decisions in their life that make it harder for me, or I got to consistently help them out with, then yeah, I do have something to say about that. And I do have an opinion about that. And it might not be the popular opinion because you don't want to hear it, but sometimes people need to hear truth. And I think that going through your life without somebody actually telling you the truth is sad, because sometimes we could have avoided so many situations if somebody had just said, listen, let me pull you aside, or let me pull your coat on this. And I also think it's about the way that you say it. So if you tell me when you're going to wrap that up and stop having babies, I do have something to say about that. I've had something to say when people said, how many kids you going to have? And I was like, as many as I can take care of that I'm not asking you about. So if I'm not asking you to take care of me or to help me out in any way, and I'm living my life independent of the things that you can provide me, then I have all the right in the world to say, don't worry about it. I got this. But if I don't got this and I'm constantly soliciting your help, then I'm also soliciting your advice, because I'm not going to be an open bank, but I'll close mouth. So that's my take on it.
This is a rare occasion. I completely agree with Shug. You know, we don't never fully agree. I 2000% am aligned with Shug today. Like, if your decisions directly affect me in any way, I got every right to say something to you. So I'll talk to and listen to my elders who my decisions or they help me a lot, or they support me a lot, or they're there when I'm down. Oh, they can give me their opinion and their advice. But if what I'm doing don't affect you and you say something to me, especially if you rude about it, I'm matching energy. I'm gonna be rude right back. You say something to me, I'm gonna say something nasty back, and you ain't gonna like it, because don't have anything to say about something that's not directly affecting you. It is very situational. With that story Suge gave, that man had a right. He had a right to say something. Cause like, we helping you take care of all of these kids. That's us. So please stop, because we ain't taking care of no more. Like, dead serious, he had a right. But if she was doing it on her own, didn't ask anybody for anything. And I'm not saying you have to be totally independent. Like, we all need help. That's just the human experience. Sometimes we do need help. But if the bulk of your help comes from somebody and then you tell them they have no say, that's not okay. But elders can be very rude too. It's still a way to say things. You still got to show respect. I think a lot of times elders feel like, well, I'm your elder. You will never be older than me. So I can talk to you however I want to because you're still a child in my eyes. And no, I'm a full-fledged adult. No, you won't talk to me however you want to.
I would say that there's two sides to this. I think that there is situational where it's definitely dependent on the situation. And if someone is basically, I don't want to say using, but having this person consistently a part of their support, and then you don't know if this person wants this or not. Like when a kid gets here, it's like almost as if like, what are we supposed to do now? Now we have to take care of this kid. And so I do think that it is definitely situational. I totally agree with that. And I think I can cuss your ass out too. Don't think that you're gonna talk to me all crazy. Like I'm gonna cuss your ass out. That's just the end of it. Like like but I feel like in me personally, I don't take no advice from nobody, especially if I ain't seen you be successful. Get out my face. Stop talking to me. However, I do agree with Suge when it comes to being situational because people are allowed to set boundaries. And I think that there's a difference between accountability and an enabler. I saw that the other day. And you can hold somebody accountable, but also if you don't say something, are you enabling this person? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't just keep having 5, 6, 7 kids and then not say nothing because then are you an enabler? So I think that there is so many components to this. I don't think that it's just one straight answer. I think that there's, like Suge saying, situational, and depending on what's being said, I might cuss your ass out. Depending on being on the other side as the caregiver and or the older person, well, I got boundaries too. And don't sit up here and think that you're gonna do this and not have to hear from me either. So I'm just saying both things. I think I love this line. I always say this to my clients. I think two things can be true at once. That's what I'm gonna say.
Why did you drop so many goddamn gems just in that like 2 minutes of talking? Damn. Okay, so I don't even know where to start, but we don't have that much time. So I'm gonna just go with the whole successful thing you mentioned. Because absolutely, if you want to sit here and give me advice about my marriage and you ain't married, or your marriage, didn't work out, or you want to give me advice about money or my career and you still working, the same low level job you've been working for the past 40 years and you still living in, like don't that's I agree with that. Like if you're going to give me unsolicited advice, at least let it be something about something that you were successful at or you knew what you were doing. I am going to add another level to this in terms of how many factors to consider, whether you're going to be mad at somebody for this or not, but also cultural mindset too. So like we are all speaking from the Black family, right? But there are some cultures where it's more of a collectivistic type of mindset. So it's not just you, the person, and your decisions. And because you're not checking in with these people, like just your decisions affect you. It's actually your decisions affect the family, no matter whether you're asking for help or not. It's the whole family is the unit. And so every individual is important in that unit. So in those types of families, like, yeah, I guess the elderly do have some kind of permission to give unsolicited advice. Maybe not rude, but it just depends on your mindset. We all think more individualistic, but when you're in that collectivistic mindset, it is more difficult for you to just say like, "Nah, you can't give me no advice," because it's like actually you can, because it's all of us in this together.
I would never cuss out an old person. Ever cuss out an old person. I done cussed out a whole lot of people. I would never cuss out the elderly. Number one, when I do get unsolicited advice, and I get it all the time, I get unsolicited advice. How many kids you gonna have? Bring 5 kids around with you, and watch how many people all of a sudden have opinions about it. Um, I don't cuss them out. So what I started doing. My best friend tells me, take the meat and spit out the bones. What are they really saying? Um, I try not to jump to get so defensive because if I do get defensive, then I can be in cuss out mode, and I try to be respectful. Even if they might not have that respect for me, I try to be respectful. So I don't cuss them out. I just take the meat and I spit out the bones. What are they saying? Maybe they're watching you struggle. Maybe you want to say it's not a struggle, but for somebody to say, I had one by myself because I don't want to share this time, they notice that there's been a struggle somewhere. So there's always these little things that we say, and somebody can pick up on them, and then they might be trying to impart some of the wisdom that they gained along the way because we're not older than them. And my grandmother used to always say, you just keep on living and things are going to happen. So now we look back and we're like, dang, you know what? That did happen. Okay, my mother was right. My father was right. And a lot of times we didn't want to listen back then, but sometimes the road can be traveled a little bit easier if we just take a little bit of gems. But um it's I know it can be hard to get some advice that you don't want to hear. So respectfully, what I say is, okay, well, thank you for that. hmm You know, I might have not asked for it, but you gave it to me anyway. You know what I mean? I always come up with like those little sudden innuendos to slap somebody upside the head. So this was good. I'm so glad y'all all weighed in on it because I was so double minded about it. And I mean, I know that a lot of people can be double minded about it. You got the people that want to cuss you out. You got the people that's going to be a little bit more passive, and you got the people that's going to be like, okay, you know what I mean? I'll take that. I'll be a little bit humble. But with that said, the reason why that was brought up is because we're going to talk about um dementia and caregivers, and we're going to talk about, you know, having to deal with people who might give unsolicited advice, who may become mean, and just you know, some cognitive decline that might explain why sometimes people say things that you didn't even ask for. So let's get into it.
At the cookout, you know, we got just what you need. At the cookout,
Let's get into our main dish. We want to be a lot more educational today, and to do that, we brought on Latori Pitts, and she's in the healthcare career field. She's been in the healthcare career field for over 10 years. So we just wanted to draw from somebody's expertise so that we can talk about caregiving and caring for people with dementia or Alzheimer's or any other diseases that you can insert into this so that you can gain a little bit more insight into what's happening.
Hi,
Hey,
Tori.
Hi, ladies. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me. I'm actually Latori Pitts. I am a clinical laboratory assistant. I work at a local hospital in my area. I have been working in the healthcare field since I was about 18, so over 25 years. I have numerous backgrounds in the healthcare field, far as going back as an aide to phlebotomy to home health care, private duty cases. I have, you name it, I've done it when it comes to the healthcare field.
So let's talk a little bit about dementia. We want to talk about the diagnosis of dementia, how it affects the person actually that has dementia, how it affects the family members. And thank goodness that we have a healthcare professional here that can talk to us about it, because I know that a lot of people have family members, you know, our grandparents, and a lot of times, you know, you can see it in multiple family members. And not only does the person that has dementia get stressed, but the caregiver gets stressed also. So we just want to kind of highlight this and bring awareness to it, and hopefully everybody can connect to it. So with that said, let's talk about exactly what dementia is.
Well, I'm gonna be honest. I don't know much about dementia. I do know that, like, clinically, it is referred to as a neurocognitive disorder, which means that there's some kind of decline in your cognitive functioning. So the way your brain is working is changing over time. The reason for it could be different. Like, there are different diseases that cause the cognitive decline, or, you know, brain injuries or things like that. But generally, that's what we refer to it, like, in a clinical setting, is a neurocognitive disorder. But what exactly is it? Like, if you've interacted with someone with dementia, or if you've worked with people with dementia, like, what does it look like? What are you seeing?
Well, from my experience, dementia is basically like a form of memory loss, and some people start to notice it at an early age. So basically, it does not have an age on it, um, and it includes Alzheimer's. So dementia is a term for memory loss, or people thinking of it as a severe ability to interfere with daily life, because that's what it does. Because if you don't have, if your memory is gone, you don't really remember a lot of things. Some people, dementia affect them in different ways. It may affect you short term, so you might only remember things that happen um more sooner, and then others remember things that may have happened only in the past.
Yeah, and I know it's like under the umbrella of Alzheimer's also. Um, so like you were saying, Amber, the neurocognitive function is down. A lot of people, like Tori was saying, notice it in an early age. One thing I have found is that it's like it seems to be hereditary. Like if you don't kind of exercise those brain muscles and keep them going, like it seems like the cognitive function declines pretty rapidly. My grandmother, and I want to say, if I'm right, Tori, all of her sisters had it except for maybe one of them. So it seemed to kind of be running rampant
Correct.
through our
Correct.
family tree. I mean, and obviously because most people inherit some of the same brain chemistry and stuff like that. But the only way that it's definitively, like 100%, you can say that this person had Alzheimer's is a brain biopsy after death or an autopsy. So the symptoms might be cognitive decline. Some people get lost. Some people start to lose words. Some people can't remember faces. My grandmother used to always say, "I know your face," but like she would not remember your name. And so, like Tori was saying, like you can remember things from a long time ago, but things that are happening like recently are just kind of getting lost. And sometimes they become violent too, especially in the later stages where, if you don't remember somebody and somebody's coming up to touch you or, just love on you, they kind of look at it like, well, I don't know you, who are you, or like, and they might become violent, or it's just that cognitive malfunction of the frontal lobe where they're just a little bit more on edge than other people.
Dang, when you explain it like that, it kind of makes me think of kind of like reverting back to the childhood brain because that's how kids are. Like, they can see someone or may not remember something or recognize someone and they get really upset and it shows through their behavior. So like violence and aggression rather than being able to reason and think through the situation before they respond. So it's just interesting to see you put it out like that because it sounds like they're like kids and then they become adults and things are all good and then they revert right back to that childhood way of thinking in older age.
You know what, that actually sounds scary to me. Now that, like, I knew that dementia was memory loss, but I wasn't sure if it was long-term or short-term memory, so I guess it can be both. But that's got to be a scary thing for somebody as an adult to have all these people saying that they know you and saying this thing and trying to talk to you, and you like, who, like, I'm just thinking of how scary that would be for a person. So yeah, I might react violently because you are coming at me and I don't know you. So that's I would be, now I have a different outlook. I'm like, it's sad for all the people who this person doesn't remember, but I've never thought about it from the lens of how scary is that for somebody to not remember anything.
Tori, I had a question about since you've been in healthcare for so long, what's the demographic that you see over your course of being in healthcare field working with individuals with dementia? What was the demographic?
I would say mostly elderly, from starting at about 70 to going above that. I also have seen individuals that age may vary from sometimes in the early 50s or 60s. So and it just depends. I never have saw a child or a youth that has dementia or Alzheimer's in that aspect, but usually it's an elderly individual, and they don't like to be classified as having dementia. They get real, I wouldn't say aggressive, but combative. They can be competitive because they're in denial of it. Some people don't even want to really even admit to not remembering things. They get very upset if you be like, "Oh, you don't remember? Don't you know who I am?" Or um, "You don't remember so and so?" They get very upset.
Is it mostly represented by people of color, like African American, Latinos?
I think
Like,
it's mainly from what I've experienced and what I've worked with. It's mainly African Americans. I don't really see many Caucasians or Hispanics or anyone with dementia. Not like I do with African Americans.
So another thing too is this is not clinical. Nobody come for me, but I always wonder if it's like linked to our diet or like it's got to be systematic or systemic because we've always had like maybe one of the worst diets because of the food that we were forced to eat. We and they always talk about how food fuels your brain and stuff like that. And then another thing is we've been not able to read, not now, but in the past and stuff like that. And so if you don't use those brain muscles and we can't use them a certain way, a lot of people do that. They do crossword puzzles, they constantly read books, they're constantly teaching classes, they're constantly learning because it wards off some of that because it helps with the brain elasticity and stuff like that. And I always wondered if it was linked to that. I don't know, I have not studied that. It's probably something that's interesting to probably look into.
You know what's crazy, Suge? I literally was thinking the same thing, but from a different angle. And it is definitely not clinical. I don't know the research. But my thing was if it really does show up more in our community, it has been researched that we have like that trauma passes through your DNA. So given our history, especially in this country, would it be like almost like a what do they call that? Oh God, what is that term that I'm looking for? It's almost like a way for us to forget trauma. Like this is something that's helping you forget past trauma. So that was my thought. Like, is this coming from our background and us having a traumatic history here, or is it coming from do people who experience trauma end up experiencing dementia more?
Kind of like through epigenetics, like kind of how you pass down everything that you've experienced and pass it down through the generations. I've always wondered that, but I used to study up under this neurosurgeon, and he was a white guy, but he used to always say, I teach. He used to say, if you want your brain to remain just, I mean, elastic and beautiful, he was like, teach. He said, okay, it's easy to take a class, but when you teach a class, it's like giving yourself double the portion. And so he said that wards off dementia. And he was like 72. He's still super sharp, and he's like 80 now.
I was always I'm sorry. I was always told that dementia comes from basically like the damage of the brain cells and hereditary. I never heard diet wise, which possibly it could be. I could see that.
I'm so glad y'all brought that up because I have the research pulled up for you. So let's get into it. So basically, what it's saying is that the late onset of Alzheimer's, there's I think a genetic pair called APOE. It provides the blueprint for a protein that transports cholesterol in the bloodstream, and everyone inherits one of the three forms of the APOE gene, except like in researchers have found that the differences in the frequencies of these pairs in different racial and ethnic groups. So, for example, data shows that a higher percentage of Blacks and African Americans than European Americans have at least one copy of the APOE E4 gene. That's why.
Thank you, Keish. So,
You're welcome.
what you saying?
I'm just saying, like, because of our genetic makeup. And the only reason why I know that is because when we like have medication, let's just say for medication, when I'm learning what I'm learning in my clinical psychopharm program is that we even metabolize medication differently because of our genetic makeup and our genes. So this would be basically on course for how why we would have dementia and Alzheimer's because we have different genes. Our genes are coded differently. So that would make sense why we would have more pairs than European Americans.
So then it's
She
really.
might be trying to.
Oh, go
Oh,
ahead,
go
Evan.
ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna make a joke. I was gonna say she might be trying to say in a nice way, Shug, that no, it ain't your diet. Like it's your
That's where I was going.
genes.
I was like, so don't come telling me not to eat. I was like,
That could be a part of it, but I was just making a joke.
I'm about to say it
Um,
could be. It could be because our
yeah,
food ain't the best in the United States. Like it could be definitely a part of that. I was just giving y'all. I know y'all was talking about the genetic part, so I just wanted to give y'all the name of the gene. So it's the APOE-E4 gene. So just in case y'all see that, that means it's associated with Alzheimer's.
I'm looking
Yes,
it up. No
and
more
with that,
pig feet for you. No
Because
more.
I sure was like, I
so
know Suge not trying to tell me I need to change my diet so I can't have dementia.
Yeah.
I bet not. He's just said it's genetic. Give me my pig feet.
Ew. First of all, you nasty
I
for
think
that.
that food
no, it
does play a
is,
part of
but
that stuff.
and it's not always just genes either. Like I do know, when I was studying for the for the psych exam, I was learning about all the different types of diseases that can cause dementia as well or contribute to it. So Alzheimer is actually a disease that can cause a lot of the symptoms of dementia. But then there's also like Huntington's disease that can cause those symptoms. There's some weird stuff, like there's like a Creutzfeldt Jacob or something like that that's weird.
Lewy
But
bodies.
like there are also diseases and Lewy bodies, yeah. And then they all like target different parts of the brain. So this is why dementia is such a huge umbrella, because it doesn't look the same for everybody. Like yeah, there's memory loss, but different parts of your brain. So like, is it the frontal lobe or the temporal lobe? That's going to change the different cognitive functions that are going to decline over time. So if it's your frontal lobe, you're going to lose your ability to reason and think and control your emotions. So you may be more violent. If it's your temporal lobe, you may have issues with like sensory stuff or like, recognizing what's going on around you. So there are the different diseases, there are the different genes, and those interact with each other to determine like how severe the dementia is going to be.
You know what's crazy? The brain is so fascinating, and like people don't really know how much scientists in the medical field actually don't know about the brain still because it's such an intricate organ. But the y'all were naming the different, other diseases that it's associated with. And it's funny because I was thinking about ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease. It's not heavily associated with that, and that really does impact the brain to where it affects every other part of that person, but they still have all their cognitive abilities. So that's crazy to me. That's why the brain has always been so fascinating, because of all the diseases that dementia pairs with, it doesn't pair with that one. And that's just a personal note to me because I'm currently dealing with a family member who has ALS, but it doesn't affect them. They like very rarely do they end up having dementia. So they just can't do anything anymore physically for themselves. Everything declines, but they still cognitively are fully aware of who they are. So it's just so interesting. It doesn't pair with that.
Yeah, because it's the brain is. I mean, it serves so many functions. But I like that you brought that up, Ash, because it makes me think about the caregiver. Because the caregiver is another person. We always think about the person that has dementia that's suffering, and they are suffering. If I can't find where I live and I'm getting lost, you know what I mean? People get hurt. So a lot of people that end up homeless might have dementia because they just don't know where they are and their families can't find them. But it's taxing on the family members too. It's definitely, or if not even on the family members that have to take care of them, people in the healthcare field, they experience a lot of emotions going through and helping to take care of people with dementia, Lou Gehrig's disease, Lewy bodies, Alzheimer's, any of these diseases. Just being the caregiver actually takes a toll on the person that's given the care. And I do want to talk a little bit about that because I think some people get villainized when they are the caregiver and they have a problem taking care of that person. Tori, can you talk a little bit about being a caregiver? I know that you've been in that role for somebody with dementia or multiple people with dementia being in your field. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Working with being a caregiver for someone who has dementia, I'm not going to lie, it's very difficult. And depending on the progression of their dementia, it could be very, you know, trying at times. If you're, I have worked with numerous people with, dementia that wasn't so bad, and they would just be like forgetful, don't remember like what they did or what they ate for that day, or they may sometimes forget that they took their medication, um but then like if you remind them, like small reminders, not to like criticize them or say, oh, you should have known that or you should remember that, that doesn't go well when you're dealing with someone with dementia. So I have worked with people with dementia who only had like a little bit of progression. But I also have worked with individuals who have tremendous progressive with dementia. And I'm talking about um leaving the house in the middle of the night, um forgetting, as well as forgetting, like taking their medications and stuff, becoming very combative, want to fight, um just real mean and nasty. Some people could be very mean and nasty when they have dementia. I have also dealt with people who dementia, they just didn't know, anything about what was going on. They just forgot their memory, like, completely. A lot of them, some of them that I have dealt with. Now I'm gonna give you an example about my grandmother. um she was going, her dementia was starting to get really bad. Not only was she forgetting who we were, but she also was becoming combative with the aides and stuff. And it was getting difficult because when certain ones would come, she didn't want to cooperate with them. She wouldn't take her medicine for them, which she needed, which was her insulin. She didn't want to take her medicine for them. She also would call them names, or just be real mean and nasty to them. And then she also, there was a time when she was in the phase of when it was really getting bad. She started calling the cops, like on my uncle and stuff, when he would try to get her to take her medicine. And when she would fight with the aides, she would just call the cops or whatever. But then when they would get there, she sometimes she didn't remember doing it. And she'd be like, I didn't call no cops, but she had a life alert on her shirt. And she would say, I didn't call the cops. I don't know what they're here for. So she wouldn't even remember that she called them, but at the time she was calling them, because she did, as a defense, she didn't want to do what she was asked to do, or cooperate with what was needed of her. We did explain to her that, you really have to take your medicine, um so you can't call the cops, or you can't, be nasty and mean when we're here to help you. So even if you explain that to them, that you're there to help them and that you're trying to um do everything you can, they still sometimes just don't cooperate. They just don't get it. The brain don't, allow them or whatever to get it. It's just part of the disease. So as a caregiver, you really can't take a lot of it personal. You have to have a lot of patience with them. You have to be understanding, and you have to be compassionate. And if you don't have that, then you really shouldn't work in that field with a person that has dementia, because it really can be challenging at times, and it could be difficult, and you do need a mental break.
Yeah.
That really
Especially.
makes me wonder, Tori, because you mentioned, your uncle and her calling the cops sometimes, just not realizing or not knowing that's like a defense mechanism. Do you
Hmm.
think it's a good idea for family members who are not, trained and well versed, or haven't like worked with people with dementia or Alzheimer's or anything like this? Do you think it's a good idea for them to be the caretakers? Because that seems like a lot for a regular person who doesn't have the training. So would you say that most people with really progressive dementia would fare better in a facility or with nurses or aides that come to the home versus their actual family members who aren't in the field trying to care for them?
I think that if a family member is taking care of a loved one with dementia or something, I think that they really should get some kind of training, because it's not easy, and they will get burned out, especially if they're doing it 24/7. um a outsider may be better to take care and assist with that. But it is good for them to see familiar faces as well. But I just think that family members really should get the proper training when it comes to working with someone with dementia, because it's not easy. It could be very challenging, and they become in their feelings, and, oh, why are they acting like that towards me? Because they don't really have the understanding and knowledge about the disease, and how it affects their loved one. And then some people are in denial too. Oh, they don't have dementia, or that's not what's going on, when real in actuality it really is. But
So
you'll
that's
notice that a lot, especially with with their children. They don't want to admit to their parent or their loved one is going through, what they're going through, because they're so used to seeing them being a certain kind of way.
part of that is because when you grow up with mom, you grow up with dad or grandma, and you, like you said, you normally see them one way. It I think as family members we don't notice the subtle changes We just know one day it looks like you just forgot everything when actually there's been a slow lead up to the time where you lost your keys and you couldn't find your keys and the time you kept on locking yourself out of the house. And we kind of chalk that up to, oh, that's just Billy Earl, just being Billy Earl. But after a while, it becomes a point where it's spectrumy and they might not see when the spectrum changed so drastically. I think that when, and just psychology based, anybody who's taking care of a person, you have to have time off. So as mental health professionals, we go to work and then we come home, and our time off is our time at home. A caregiver who lives in the house with somebody does not get that time off. They have to stay with that person. They're waking up in the middle of the night with that person. They're constantly trying to keep that person from running away, depending on wherever their cognitive decline is. And then they have to deal with all the family members and other opinions. And then they have to deal with the opinions of the healthcare workers. And at the same time, they have to deal with that person. So I think that, like, one thing Tori did say that made sense to me was they should have some kind of training. On top of training, it should be a tag me in situation. So if that person's not an only child, there should be multiple people taking shifts to take care of that person if you want to keep them at home.
I was wondering, Tori, is there do you know of like any like state funding or any programs that are willing to fund for caregivers? I just know in the state of Ohio they have some sort of program where if caregivers apply, they can get paid through the state. So and I don't know if that's specifically for Alzheimer's, but I just know they have something applying through the state. So I didn't know if you had any resources or any thoughts around that, or it's the same in your state.
Actually, yes, there are facilities that do fund dementia, Alzheimer's. I know we have an Alzheimer's Association that do provide services to individuals and their families that are going through that process. I also know that we do in New York State have like a program where a family member or a close friend could take care of their loved one and get paid for it. So they do offer those services to the loved one, because it's a lot of work, and some family members can't work when they're taking care of a loved one, especially with dementia, because it's a hands-on job. You have to be there for that individual. And not only do you have to be there for them as far as like helping them get dressed and stuff. Sometimes you have to be there to help them with far as their ADL skills. And that comes with like bathing and toileting and stuff like that. So it's actually a hands-on job. So they do provide services for individuals, for family members, for the individual that has those issues, that dementia. Now I also know my grandmother used to go to a facility where she would go part-time. Well, she could have went full-time, but with her dementia, as it was progressing, it was getting bad. They could barely get her, to want to participate and get dressed. So we only had her do part-time. But they do have a facility, at least in New York State, where the individual could go, like a daycare basically, and that gives some free time for the loved one or the caregiver to do what they need to do, or whatever, while that individual is gone, to that day program. So they do have those options as well, but I don't think a lot of people realize it, because I don't think that the providers actually tell you a lot of stuff about where to get those services from. But they do have those services available to those people who are readily um needing it, and require it, because it is hard. You need that support, and like Rashonda said, you do need family support, because it's mentally exhausting to the caregiver as well. You need that get out sometimes.
Good question,
Yeah, I don't
Sage.
think a lot of people probably know about the services because they're not like promoted heavily. Like you got to find out about them. Like right now, it's probably people watching this from our hometown that's like, oh, I wasn't aware. And you would think that, doctors and people would make them aware of these services because you mentioned it, Tori, and I immediately was like, man, that burnout is real. Like you will get burned out very fast trying to take care of somebody who needs that type of care. And I don't think people realize that. They just feel like, well, it's my loved one. I'm gonna take care of them like they took care of me, especially if it's their parent. They like my mama raised me and took care of me. I'm gonna do what I gotta do for her. That's ideal, but you don't understand how that burnout is. You being your parents and stuff raising you as a child, especially if everything was normal for you and you didn't have any issues, is very different from helping somebody who has a condition that you don't understand really. So that I don't think people realize how fast that burnout can happen and that you really need to take a break.
So I like that y'all talked about that. So we just got a few more minutes, but we do want to get into how to take care of yourself if you are the caregiver. And I like to call this caring for the caregiver just based on my training. And my little takeaway is that if you are the caregiver, one thing she did mention was a daycare. And it sounds terrible when you say daycare, but just having your loved ones see some people other than you and do other things to kind of exercise their brain. I don't know if it would slow the decline down, but it's helpful for yourself and for them. And when you're helping them, because a lot of times your mind is stayed on them and you're kind of worried about what's going on with them, how it's happening, you're going to be helping yourself. So just making sure that you have an outlet to take care of them and also taking care of yourself and doing things that you love and being able to tap in to somebody else so that you can trust that they're in good care while you're taking care of yourself.
It's a book called Caring for the Caregiver. So when you said that, I was like, is she talking about the book or she just thinks she made it up? Because that's the actual book.
No, that's what we use in the chapel corps.
Well, I would also say hearing the resources from Tori, some things that I probably didn't even think about or weren't aware of. I think the lack of knowledge of resources is a barrier in getting the proper care or the proper support. So knowing whether there is an adult daycare anywhere in your community, knowing whether your insurance would cover that or whether, there are funds that are available to cover that or whether it's a free service. So really educating yourself on what's available. I know in some states they will actually pay the family member who is the caregiver that's caring for the one who has dementia or whatever the diagnosis is. So just looking online, finding those resources. Don't feel defeated when you can't find the first one or two things that you're looking for, but really educating yourself, getting that knowledge, and then going out and getting those resources that are available for you and for your family member.
I just want to say, piggyback on that one thing. Also, if the person that you're taking care of has a social worker, you can also reach out to them because they will provide you with the services, the information about the services that you could receive. Because there are a lot out there. You just have, like you said, you just have to be made aware of what they are. But a social worker would really be able to give you the information that you need as well, or at least point you in the direction that you need to go to.
And that could be a social worker, and sometimes it's a case manager. The title may change, but the person's job will be similar. They're the person that's helping connect them to certain services in the community. And then if they don't have one of those, get them one. Get them a case manager or a social worker so you have somebody to talk to and get those resources from.
I'm glad you said that, Amber, because I was thinking this whole time if we talking about the taking care of the actual caregiver. I know a lot of times they will provide, at least I know in personal experience, they'll provide the person with the medical issue or issue. They provide them with therapeutic services because people like you are dealing with something new, like especially if it's early onset dementia and they still kind of remember, but it's happening and it's progressing. They'll provide them with therapy. But I'm like, man, can they provide the caregivers with therapy? Because they need it too. Like caregivers need therapists. I don't care what anybody says. They are some of the main people that need to be able to talk to somebody that's unbiased that can really help them and give them tools. And I don't see a lot of caregivers actually doing that, like going to therapy because they don't have time. Half the time they feel like I don't have time. I'm taking care of my family member. It's like, but you got to make time for that because how are you decompressing? How are you venting?
Yeah, and there's a certain level of grief because you also have to grieve the old person that you once knew. So come on, Keish, Miss Social Worker.
Honestly, I really didn't have much to add because y'all kind of hit on all the points. I will say, from a cultural standpoint, I think that people who are working with individuals who may not, let's just say, share the same cultural background of the person who has Alzheimer's, I think it's important to be just understanding of that cultural and that sense of culture, because I think sometimes people treat individuals with dementia or Alzheimer's all the same, and it's not all the same, and especially if those cultural aspects are intertwined with that. So I would just say, just being respectful of those different cultural backgrounds if you are a non-person of color, and you're working with a family of color, and what that looks like in that family. So that would be what I would have to contribute.
All right. Well, this was a really great episode. I actually learned a lot. Like, I learned a lot in a lot of our episodes, especially from the other aunties, but I learned a lot this episode. And I think this was a great episode, especially for caregivers to hear and feel seen and heard, because a lot of times they don't feel that. Um, and I love how Auntie Keish kind of wrapped us up on the cultural side of things, because also we have to realize, especially for us, our community is sometimes very collectivist. So we're not going to just put our people in a facility. That's not how we operate all the time. So with that being said, I hope y'all all learned something. We are so glad that Tori was here to kind of give us all that information from her vast knowledge of working in this specific area or with people with dementia and Alzheimer's all these years. And we hope that y'all have a beautiful rest of the evening.
Wait, I got a question. What y'all about to do?